Hey everybody, welcome back to Chicagoland Chats. This is day 3 in a row where we're trying to give you solutions for both your business and personal life disruption here during the coronavirus scare. Hope everyone's being healthy and safe at their home. I'm Adam Serwinski with Sidebar Insurance, joined as always by Butch Zemar. Butch, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do to everybody out there?
Sure. I'm Butch Zemar from Elite Benefits. We help small to mid-sized companies navigate this thing called the Affordable Care Act through employee benefit programs and attraction and retention of employees.
Yeah, health insurance benefits expert. I'm Adam Serwinski. We're with Sidebar Insurance Solutions, where we do handle all your property and casualty needs, whether it be home insurance, auto insurance, business insurance, malpractice insurance, you name it. We can revise and review your current current coverages to make sure that you're getting the best value for your insurance dollar. But today, our focus is not on what we do. Our focus is on our good friend Scott Nicholson from KO Business Solutions, who provides businesses with expanded workforce opportunities and solutions, as well as some logistical support in how they operate their business. So, you know what, Scott, you'll probably be way better at introducing what you do. So why don't you introduce yourself and your business to the people out there?
Great. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Butch. I appreciate the invite today. Yeah, you kind of nailed it in the description. We always hold ourselves out as a workforce management firm. We provide labor to help companies solve disruptive challenges that they may face, and is exactly what we're going through right now. Disruption is a real big deal for companies. So we do it in a couple different methods, whether it's providing project teams of labor to help solve solutions, customer service, call center staffing solutions, either temporary projects or temp to perm, pipelining of candidates. We develop the job profiles and deliver against that. Solving disruptive issues such as audit compliance-based issues and assembling audit teams to come in and help manage that particular process, as well as we have a call center where we work with our customers and our clients in streaming customer interaction, both inbound as well as outbound contact strategies. We help manage volatility based on call volumes, spiking, overflow, seasonality. So we'll work with clients, help study how their call patterns work, and we'll develop a team to help become a resource in that respect. So we've grown over the course of the past 3.5 years to become very versatile on the types of projects and how we deploy our personnel to those projects.
Very cool. So in a tangible, I think it's going to be really good to give context about what all those things kind of mean. If you could walk through kind of a standard client, like how the relationship would work so that people can understand kind of the breadth of what you can offer, but also the specifics of like how it can be applicable to their everyday business life.
Absolutely. I'll use several different use cases is probably the best way to help amplify that. I started this business 3.5 years ago as a consultant and going in and helping organizations with go-to-market strategies, developing operational procedures to help manage customer interactions is a real good example. But what evolved out of there was identifying staffing needs within my core client base where high turnover affected how they worked and the need to refine their recruiting process. So our firm stood up a staffing recruiting team that helps companies deliver, whether it's on a temp to perm, where it's a try before you buy type of model, and we will staff employees into a work environment. You can observe how they work and then matriculate them in as full-time employees, or project-based. I have clients that run big sprints of activities. One generates 6 million 1098-T forms in the month of January. We assembled a work team of 15 individuals to go in and help with the production and distribution of those 1098-Ts as an example. That's one use case on how we would interact with a client, find the challenge, and help assemble a team to help address that. We had a client recently, about a year ago, that had a major event with an audit by ICE on the management of their 1098-T forms. We were able to assemble a compliance team to come in, help identify the risk in those forms and the way those forms were managed, and then stood up an audit process to review the totality of all their forms, and help them organize a retention process and a purge methodology that really helped keep them in compliance. That's another use case. The company tried to self-manage that for a period of time, but it was disruptive to their growth to deploy personnel to it, and it made more sense to offshoot that type of activity.
So if I'm hearing correctly, just maybe to give you feedback on what I'm hearing, you're able to, whether it's a new task, a new employee, or a new kind of venture that a business is going to undertake, allow them to do so in kind of a cost-effective manner without taking up and ramping up their staff, ramping up their unemployment exposure, workers' comp exposure, expenses, all those things in a more strategic fashion to see if it's actually going to work, and then allow those some members to be potentially hired or brought on full-time to the direct company that they run.
100%. I think there's probably two scenarios in there. One, we de-risk employment, right? So we take that risk away when it comes to the unemployment mods, things of that nature. And you're trying to decision if you're hiring in large quantities like call centers, customer service world, where they turn people over at a high pace during the first 90 days, it makes sense to offset some of that exposure. So we do de-risk that. We also become a great placeholder as a company. You use the term, I think, ramping up, as a ramping up process to insert our team in there until that process or the company is stabilized, and then you can take and own the employees and own the process around there. We become a cost-effective placeholder in those particular situations or scenarios.
And so for situations like this, where there is this kind of disruption, or there is a need maybe to support your staff, your normal staff, as they're maybe taking care of their kids at home or working off-site, you're a cost-effective way to kind of boost that up, improve, keep that same quality and experience for your customers, while also not necessarily having to hire on in these difficult times or bring on additional staff.
Sure, 100%. It's a good offload for volumes, things of that nature. I'll give you a use case that we're working on currently that came to us at the end of last week, and it's for one of my clients who has an opportunity to take on over 300 call center seats for a firm that had a major event. The coronavirus hit, a legacy call center they had in Manila basically shut it down. They're in urgent mode right now to redeploy resources here in the United States on a remote workforce basis. So our team was brought in to do the recruiting and the labor allocation for the project, identify people that qualify, and help stand them up to get deployed to service this client. You know, their hold times went up to over 4 hours, as you can imagine, when you have lack of customer interaction and through these challenging times. And you know, the project's not been without its own challenges from a security perspective and access level permissions, and trying to navigate and work through normal ISO requirements, security standards, has been very challenging. But we're really working diligently between all stakeholders to resolve that. But that's a really good example of how we can handle disruption and help clients meet demand basis in a very quick fashion.
Awesome. Now, looking forward a little bit, I don't know if this is too far-fetched, but as soon as we get through this tiring time of the virus that's out there, and businesses going through their struggles and putting Band-Aids on things to kind of get through so they can keep revenue flowing, I think part of your company, you also do consultant services, including some training aspect to employees. So can you paint the picture for us so we get through this virus? Like, how can businesses retrain, retool, let's get ramped up again and start generating more revenue going forward?
Sure. There's probably a couple pieces in there I've been thinking through, so it will come from the top of my head out right now, I guess. But some of that is, you know, the workforce dynamic is going to change coming out of this, I believe, right? So the three of us are sitting in our home offices having this conversation, as is the majority of the United States at this point. And I think one of the key things that will emerge is there's going to be a strong movement towards a remote workforce in the future where it makes sense. and companies aren't equipped to handle the virtualization of the training modules, as an example, the communication streams, and the way to integrate daily ongoing communications with their team. And I think that's one way, from an operational perspective, we can help step in and assist companies in designing those strategies and in designing those trainings, the delivery models, et cetera. That is one real good example. We deployed our remote workforce in pretty quick order. We've had some experience in doing that, and being able to lever that experience as well in helping coach clients and how to establish a more rigid and robust model around that is going to be an opportunity for us.
Yeah, hopefully this doesn't happen again, but we'll be stronger coming out.
Yes, 100%. I think the thing that I've also observed in dealing with some of our clients is the lack of contingency planning around events like this. I think if nothing else, there's opportunity there for us to assist clients as well. Here's the fundamental structure of a contingency plan. Here's how you would test against that, and create a level of preparedness. I'm fortunate in both businesses that I'm engaged in. We had a pretty immediate reaction to this, assembled the teams, and really were able to effectively deploy and be responsive to this with minimal disruption.
That's really great. One of the things that I think people might be able to take from that is, and from you talking about being able to deploy and kind of transition your team to this kind of remote work, or are some of the strategies that you kind of train or develop for your own staff? What are the type of things that you're telling your staff, or that you're telling the people on your team, that have allowed them, or that you instilled in your business, that have allowed them to be so adaptive and allowed you to be able to carry through with this?
Sure. I think there's several pieces here. So one was incremental testing. So just from the standpoint of we were about a week ahead of some of the events that led the majority of people to work from home. So we did incremental testing with staff to make sure connectivity existed, that they had environment set up that was conducive to the types of work that we were doing with minimal disruption. Then we developed oversight from the standpoint of just managing SLAs and KPIs to evaluate work productivity to the best of our ability, because you lose site access, you lose the day-to-day contact. So having that ability to just monitor productivity was extremely important. So we worked on what that looked like and how that information was disseminated and shared on a daily basis. So everybody, and people tend to hold themselves accountable when they see their own productive numbers and respond accordingly, right? And then it was establishing communication protocols. So those communication protocols were everything from, if you experience an issue, here's your go-to contact, here's how it gets escalated. In the event that Scott's not available, what is the next resource to go to? So we made sure that that was clearly articulated as part of our plan to everyone. Then, from a client-facing perspective, launching those similar types of communications, so client expectations were established and set. Knowing that we had a remote workforce, accessibility might not be as immediate as it was at one point, because we're dealing with both our own social issues as well as work activity, and getting those factors level set. So then it became, how do we establish the ongoing communication? So I kind of coined the process with our team of, let's start social. So kicking off with Zoom calls, kicking off with daily communications, text, emails to the staff, to try to keep a level of engagement very active through this process, and then just trying to enhance on it. And we're evolving that as well. But then equipping the directors and the people responsible for their teams with the same types of capabilities and tools and instructions. So that's a lot of the process we went through to convert from what was predominantly a premise-based workforce to a remote workforce in pretty quick order.
And these are some of the same tactics or things that they can do. Obviously, intermittent testing, something they've basically been thrown into, but the other steps you're talking about are things that they could be doing and adapting to now as we're going forward with, maybe weeks or months of potential isolation.
Absolutely.
That's right.
You know, we, excuse me, a segment of our workforce is call center related. And so the one thing that we did was increase the scrutiny on the calls more, not because we question whether Scott is handling the call correctly, but making sure that we're not experiencing latency in the phone lines and issues that really impact the quality of delivery. And so we monitor a lot more aggressively than we did before, just because it's all new. And the challenges with home-based access versus being on a LAN system in the office is very different. So,
You know, one of the things that you're just talking through that call center has brought to mind, and I know we talked about this before we went on, is, you know, you work with these call centers with multiple inbounds, right? Sources. So they could get a call from company A or company B, in the same call center. People are maybe responding to that call. Is that fair? I mean, it could be.
yeah, for the most part, we're dedicated per project.
Okay.
So there's not necessarily crossover that exists there. So that has been less of an issue from a standpoint of knowledge transition, things of that nature.
Okay, but I guess the other thing is that, so it's a fairly, but the call center by its nature is fairly dynamic. The employees have to be dynamic in their ability to handle a range of issues, whether it be for one customer or, like you said, the changeover is not something that you had to deal with. What systems and what strategies do you have that team employ in order to deal with the dynamic? I just say that because in my own experience, like 5 minutes ago, I'm dealing with kid stuff. 2 minutes ago, I'm dealing with, 30 minutes ago, I had a call with one of my vendors. And then right now, obviously, we're talking to you, and I'm sure in about 10 to 15 minutes after we wrap this up, I'm dealing with a third option, right? And so
Sure.
we're very fluid and dynamic. And what strategies do you employ for your staff and for yourself to kind of handle that dynamic and fluid inflow or work environment? Because I think
Sure.
that a lot of people are creating a lot of anxiety and struggle right now with that.
Sure. So it probably varies a little bit by function, but let's start with the call center as a good example of one. You know, it's not as dynamic from the standpoint as they have set schedules. So you, they're starting their day, whether it's at 7 a.m. or 10 a.m., whatever their shift schedule is. That part of the routine hasn't been disrupted. What obviously what I touched on before probably has been system related issues because you're working remotely. How do you access that? So the communication protocols that we talked about is part of that organization that provides them the ability to respond to a challenge that's been in front of them as quickly as possible and access to a resource point. From a knowledge perspective, we do have a shared drive of information that they can access as well to help coach themselves through. And then when it comes to calls, there are escalation processes in place. If they can't handle it, instead of grabbing the supervisor who's sitting next to them, they have the ability to transfer that call into a team of people assigned to be able to help resolve those types of calls. So that has helped, I think, with a lot of the fluidity that might exist from a call center perspective. Then, when it comes to some of our project managers and the activities they're on, it's really mapping itineraries daily. And one of the things that we do as a team is start in the morning with our calls to kind of say, okay, here are the primary objectives of what we're trying to accomplish for the day that feeds into the week. And sometimes it does change hourly just based on the fluidity of the information that's flowing in. And we try to be as responsive to those elements as possible too. But I think by starting the day with that mapping and the goal setting for the day creates an agenda then that people can follow, and it gives some sense of normalcy to how they're working, right? And I think that's really important in all of this. For myself personally, I've tried not to disrupt my own routine just from the rising time, the work time, the end time, establishing a different type of cadence using video calls now from a standpoint of reaching out to people as opposed to face-to-face meetings. And I've used a lot of this time to benchmark with guys such as yourself to determine, okay, how are you responding to these events, and accumulate as much information as possible to help inform us moving forward. So It's really trying to keep a very regular cadence, I think, is the overall instruction that we've given to people. So, or coaching, I should say. It's not even necessarily instruction, it's coaching.
So if a business had a disruption and needed to outsource to one of your call centers, like what's the lag time to try to get a company up and running and outsource that?
Sure. It's probably a 2-week process at a minimum, because we have to really understand volume and need levels, the connectivity issues, create the training. I mean, all of this can be done virtually, so that aspect of it is less challenging. In Then the identification of staff, the training of staff, there is a process there in order to make it effective. You could do it under a 2-week time frame, but that, I think, in really mapping it out, it would be the minimum recommendation I would make, because there's a lot of detail that has to feed into that type of transition.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Butch, do you have anything more? Or Scott, if you've been obviously interacting with your clients and customers more, anything else that you feel like based on your experience in the issue, the inbounds you're getting, that you think businesses need to be thinking about, either if they're not there yet, because maybe like you talked about, you're a week ahead, they're not there yet, or that they need to be thinking about now to get ahead of maybe this protracted lockdown if it keeps going?
Yeah, I think the exercises that we went through is the very first thing was really evaluating job requirements and levels of activity. And to put it in simple terms, we would look at it and say, this activity has a high impact to the business, this one has a moderate, this one was low. So my focus was on the high impact activities and preserving those activities so we can function as a going concern. The moderate impact are necessary. In the short term, maybe not as necessary, but you have to plan for those. And the low impact are those that we take off the table. So what that exercise allowed us to do is then determine, okay, where is my labor base with all of this, and what can I use to create triggering events when I can eliminate the low activities? It helps me be more responsive as time goes on, if that makes sense, from how we allocate labor. That was the first exercise we went through. And even now, it's a matter of projecting out further and just creating scenarios of, if these events occur, what are my next actions and what are the next steps that I have to take? So what triggering events do there need to be, whether it's revenue related, protracted timeline, and continuing to create that map. So I am prepared, and the organization is prepared to make decisions and act on those decisions. And I think companies will come out stronger if they're in front of that curve through that type of planning, as opposed to being reactive. And that's really what the exercises we're starting to have conversations around as a team right now. So
it's awesome. Now, what industries or company size, for that matter, or a combination of both, that would where it's actually a good fit for when you step in and start taking over some of those tasks from them?
Sure. Industry agnostic from a start. We have a client base that stretches a pretty broad breadth, from education to financial services to cars, automobiles, in managing the life cycle of automobiles as an example. So 3 pretty different types of use case environments. From a size perspective, typically, companies of 50 or greater have a little bit more disruption from a personnel perspective. And that's really where our model can step in and be of great assistance. On the same token, we've had great success in supporting startups, just being incremental labor sources and offshoot for a certain function for a short period of time. So even there, it does make sense. One of my most consistent clients over the course of the past 2 years was an organization of about 10 to 12 people. And we just were a constant customer interaction source for them all throughout their history. So I don't like to distinguish, but it makes the most sense, companies 50 or greater, just based on volume and need.
Well, this has been great, Scott. Why don't you give out your contact information so anyone who watched this video found some value in it and can reach out to you and maybe ask you follow-up questions or even engage you to help expand or improve their business. I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to kind of let them know how they can link up.
Sure. So phone number is 630-230-6766. Email address is s.nicholson, Nicholson, at kin-onore.com. And our website is www.k-obusiness.com.
And we'll actually make sure that that's included on the YouTube link and any kind of Facebook links that we're doing so that you guys who out there watching can just simply click and get in touch with Scott so he can help you in the business as you being, as a master of disruption or handling disruption, if you will. He can help you guys get through and wade through these times. And also, I think, too, it's really important from a management perspective. Just listen to you, Scott. I'll be frank, like that whole listing of things, like what things we need to be working on as far as high importance, middle importance, and low importance is a huge thing, but businesses of all sizes need to be doing right now to really strategize and maximize their time.
I appreciate that, Adam.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Butch, anything else you want to add?
No, that's great. I appreciate your time coming out and walking us through some of those strategies and what kind of businesses could utilize your services. I think it's fantastic, especially in a time like this.
Great, guys. I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. Everyone have a great rest of your week. It's Thursday, obviously. I hope you guys are staying safe, staying productive, and staying happy as can be. I'll be the internet's kind of, at least in my experience, giving me some headaches. So yeah. I'm going to vent on that. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see you guys
and
later.
We'll see you guys all tomorrow with some. We're actually going to have Chris from. Where's Chris from, Butch?
FutureLink IT.
FutureLink IT is going to give us some tech solutions for work from home, for you work from homers, so you can better have some opportunities to improve your technical support, and maybe he'll have anything for me on my internet. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.